welcome. Welcome to our college.
Assistant Professor Political Science, South Calcutta Girls College. Next we have Dr. Sudeshna Mitra, Associate Professor Political Science. Next. I'd like to call Dr. Pramod Sharma, Associate Professor, Department of Political Science, to please come on the stage, sir, please. Will you?
थोड़ा छोटा है, adjust कर लेना. I am really so happy to initiate with this 2 days national conference conducted by these organizers on a very important and relevant topic of today is on operating at ease policy through soft power. In fact, we have been facing a lot of problems across the globe, and especially East and West policies. The Act East policy, launched by the Prime Minister Narendra Modi in 2014, evolved from the Low East policy to promote active engagement.
Mass politics that we can be a democratic country, and at the same time they cannot be really uphold their national sovereignty perspective. So we can imagine that China will be close to the golden straitjacket, way away from the mass politics. US will be very close to nation state today when they try to disrupt the entire world. So in world today, when we look at the future of trade, we have to look at the Roderick framework and realize that there is a constant churning out of current position of the countries, and maybe once we proceed, we can evaluate India's relation with ASEAN and other East countries from that perspective. Next slide, please. So what are we having? As a result of the changed deglobalization, which by Rodrick scenario is forcing countries to move away from WTO and following them, asking them to follow a nation-state perspective. We see number of regional trade agreements by which countries just engage with a handful of trade partners. That's increasing over the period. In fact, we have seen that manifestation of that in President Trump when he forced a number of bilateral trade agreements with a number of partner countries within a period of 4 months. Next slide, please. And what is happening in East Asia? Are they embracing the regionalization, that is bilateral trade agreement route? Not really. If you look at the number of trade agreements in the East Asia, the Oceania region, they increased to some extent. There are still a number of cumulative agreements, but the agreements each year incrementally is coming down, which means we have reached a degree of equilibrium. So when we talk about how India can increase trade with the East, we have to remember these countries are already in the steady state, which America is not. They are looking for a new trade equilibrium. Next slide, please. Next. So, what is the expectation of India or any country for that matter when they try to go for a trade engagement? Because when we talk about lookist to actist, definitely trade was one of the major expectations. Ideally, what we can say, there will be some winner sector, trade creation, there will be some losing sectors, trade diversion, and in long run, three things must come if a country has to succeed from the trade. That will be FDI coming from trade partners, Japan, Singapore, South Korea with technology. Second, there must be some form of competition, which Chinese firms are giving to Indian players very significantly. If that happens, Indian players will be forced to become more competitive, and as a result of that, in long run, there might be economies of scale benefits. Now, let's see very briefly what happens. Next slide, please. Okay, when we look at trade benefit in the world, there is something called smile curve that usually dominates. Ideally, what it says, you can see from the diagram here, there is a U-shaped contour that initially a firm will lose. Why? Because if there is competition from China, they must reduce their cost, they must reduce their price, their profit margin will be thinner, and only in the long run, you can see the bottom, what we can call as the caterpillar, that initially maybe in India, there is nothing, no post-production value-added activities, research and development, designing, marketing, strategy, nothing takes place. But once these activities deepen in a country, their participation in value chain of a country will increase, and as a result of that, the participation of the firms will increase once again. It happened in China. It happened in many other Southeast Asian countries. Next slide, please. Next slide. So, in Southeast Asia, what took place? We call that as a flying geese phenomenon. So, you can see that initially in the sectors where the technical risk involvement is the minimum, that you can take farm workers from paddy fields and have them in the local production network, that will be garments. Next, there can be next layer of technology intensive industries, which will be chemical, then iron and steel, then automobile, and then only you can reach the semiconductor stage. It happened in Southeast Asia very effectively. It's no wonder why in Bangladesh 70% of their export is explained by garments. This is because they could not progress beyond a particular technology threshold. Now for India to grow, to benefit from the Act East policy, this is what graduation we are ideally looking for. Next slide, please. Okay. So now, in India, when we try to move from lookist, in lookist initially what we did, 90s we all know, there was a, we call it a trembling hand equilibrium in, again, economic term. The Congress government at that point, they took one step. Next year, they gave subsidies which kind of negated the effect of reform. So for a couple of years, it was kind of a lost reform opportunity. Then, when the Gujarat and Devegowda governments came, there was again perhaps more focus on managing the domestic political realities rather than long-term trade interests. So as a result of that, we could find a very stable option which started from 99 with the NDA-1 government coming to power. So we found that a number of FTAs negotiation started. India tried to look at the competence mapping, which sector we are efficient and which sector we should not open for. It started. They lost power in 2004. So the negotiation onus came on the UPA government, and during that period, what we can call as the naive negotiations, in many of the negotiations, we overcommitted. So starting with the regional trade agreement with Singapore in 2005 and ending with the comprehensive agreements with ASEAN, Japan and South Korea, we entered hoping for export opportunity, investment inwardness. Next slide please.